Hello, my name is Marshall Weber. I chose Mercury for my PowerPoint, and on the left side of this you can see what we see for Mercury, this grayish color planet, and then on the right is an enhanced photo from NASA's Messenger spacecraft. Both of these are from that. And it picks up on all the infrared colors that pop out from it, and I think it's pretty stunning of a photo if you ever wanted to see that. Our first planet is Mercury. It was discovered in 3000 BC by the Sumerians. There is no specific founder that's recorded for Mercury, but it was found in written archives of the early Sumerians. It's very close to the sun most of the time, so that means that it would be in the sky during the daytime and hard to find. So it wasn't found as fast as the other planets were, because of how bright they are compared, and has the closest orbit to the sun. It got its name from the Roman messenger god Mercury. Mercury is a very unique planet because of its features that it has, its orbit, and really cool, interesting facts that come with Mercury. Let's get into it. Some of the key surface features of Mercury include the multiple impact craters from collisions with meteoroids and comets, which is also what creates the crater rays. So if you look at the image, these circles would be like the craters from the impacts. There's a bunch of them everywhere. If you just look at any spot on Mercury, you'll see a crater. And these lines parallel to it are crater rays, which from the impact, the debris goes out in relatively straight lines, and it makes this really cool feature on the planet. To us, Mercury is a grayish brown color. Another feature that it has is called scarps, which translates to steep cliff, which is only common on Mercury. It's seen on other planets, but not to this degree and how common they are on it. They were created for Mercury's thermal history, being close to the sun and heating up the surface, creating these really steep cliffs that go across it. Another cool feature on it is the Calaris Basin. This is bigger than Texas, and in comparison, Texas, don't mind the shape, but it's relative like that. It's bigger than Texas, so Texas would be about this size in comparison to it. And it came from a giant impact crater, and the term basin is any crater that is larger than 186 miles in diameter. And on the side of this, it has mountains that go all around it that are a mile high, which is pretty cool. Does Mercury have an atmosphere and magnetic field? Mercury does not have an atmosphere. It has an exosphere, which blasts atoms off the surface by solar wind and sends them back out to space. This exosphere is composed of oxygen, sodium, hydrogen, helium, and potassium. And the magnetic field is only 1% of Earth's magnetic field, so it does not, it's really hard to compare it in that way, but sometimes it makes this really cool thing called magnetic tornadoes, which brings in solar atoms, rays, brings them into the surface and blasts them back off into space, which is really interesting. What is the internal structure of Mercury like? Well, it starts with the crust, and then it goes to a solid mantle right under it, and then you got an outer molten core and then a solid inner core. Just like any of the other terrestrial planets, it's going to have a solid core. This one is primarily iron. The revolution period of Mercury is probably one of the most interesting of all of the planets because of its elliptical orbit. It goes around the sun in 88 Earth days, and um, its day is about 59 Earth days. The way that it orbits in this elliptical way is really interesting because that means each year that it's going to be in a different spot than it was the year before. So it's not just following the same circle like all the other planets are. This brings up the 2 to 3 ratio, which every 2 rotations on its axis, Mercury completes 3 orbits around the sun, which is pretty interesting. So the extreme temperature difference between day and night, since the rotational period is slow and it also has no atmosphere, night and day last longer on each side, causing the day side to be extremely hot, around 800 degrees Fahrenheit, and at night, on the night side, to be extremely cold, negative 290 degrees Fahrenheit. So with it being 800 degrees during the daytime, you would think that ice caps would not be able to form, but that is not true. Since there's so many impact craters around Mercury, the sun's heat doesn't get to the inside of the craters in certain spots, and that makes it so there's permanent ice caps that fill within those craters. And since there's no atmosphere, they're constantly exposed to space, which is extremely cold. So it is surprising, but possible. What are some of the missions to Mercury? So the first one I want to bring up is the Mariner 10, which launched on November 3rd, 1973, and it just did a flyby of Venus and Mercury, which we got our first images of Mercury from there by the United States. NASA sent this one. It had 2 telescopes on it, infrared radiometer, ultraviolet air glow spectrometer, ultraviolet oculator spectrometer, magnetometer, charged particle telescope, and a plasma analyzer, and gave us a lot of first for our Mercury that we didn't know. The second one is the Messenger, which means Mercury surface space environment geochemistry and ranging. Launched on August 2nd, 2004, and ended on April 30th, 2015. This was the first spacecraft to visit Mercury in 30 years, and it was the first ever to orbit Mercury, which is extremely interesting. This one collected long-term information about Mercury that we never would have thought about. Never would have thought about. This gives information on Mercury that was hard to grab from Earth, that we couldn't just read from telescopes. We would have to be nearby in order to understand them. And then the last one is from the European Space Agency. It's called Bepi Colombo. I hope I pronounced that right. It launched October 20th, 2018. And it's already done multiple flybys of Mercury, but it's going to end up at Mercury in November 2026. So this one is an ongoing one, which means that we will be getting information as time comes. So far, it's already done 4 flybys, and 2 to come. And with this information, we're going to get so much more knowledge about this relatively small planet that we don't know much about yet. And I got all of my information from mostly NASA and some science websites. All right, and I hope you guys have a good day. Thank you.